Welcome. This is For Better and Worth,
the podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young, and we're so glad you joined us today.
All right, y'all, come on. Let's get into it. Hey, guys. Back again with the For Better and Worth podcast.
Hey, we are back and excited.
We're your hosts, Chris and Ericka Young. And so this is episode 3, and we want to dig a little bit deeper and give you guys a little insight on who we are and, why we even care about doing this. So, Ericka, you want to start out? We're going to talk a little bit about our college careers, our college backgrounds, and, some of our career choices and some of the things that we've done. And ultimately, I think, get us to how we're sitting here behind the microphone now.
Well, sure. So, frankly, I will just jump right on in and say that I was good at math and science. And at the time in the 90s, when everybody was, really trying to break out into some tech careers, people said to me that you are an underrepresented minority. You should go into engineering. I heard that from many different arenas. I heard it at school. I heard it from family members. And so I listened. Because we grew up in Michigan, I always wanted to go to the University of Michigan. That was always where I intended to be. I held my breath when I was waiting on an acceptance from them. And I'm pretty sure, I was a good student, but I wasn't a stellar student. But I was thankful that I got in. Didn't get a whole lot of money when I went, but hey, I got in, and their engineering school was awesome. And so it was hard as well. And I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out my place. I thought that I was going to do software engineering. I thought that I was going to, just be this high profile corporate woman with my briefcase. That was, I know, a long time ago, the briefcase thing. But,
I think that's everybody's goal at some point.
Maybe. But I just thought I was about to kill it in corporate. And I was offered a position at a company in Michigan because I did a summer internship there. But I also, at a college fair, got very intrigued by Motorola and took a trip out to Arizona. And that piqued my curiosity that there was a world outside of Michigan that was beautiful and new and warm and sunny. And I remember calling Chris and saying, "Oh my gosh, I think I'm going to love it here."
Man, you're jumping way ahead. You put that thing on like fast forward.
I did.
Full throttle. So
I was excited. All right.
let's slow it down just a little bit.
Yeah.
And so when I think about how it all started for me, I grew up in Detroit. We both grew up in the city, and I grew up, relatively poor. We had everything we need, but we didn't get everything we wanted. And my mom worked really hard to do that. And the one thing that I knew is that I had to go to college. But I also played football. And so I was like, man, I'm trying to get a scholarship. And I was just on the cusp of being good enough to get a scholarship. But knowing what I know now, I know I could have played, D1 and D2. But the only thing I was focused on was I'm going to college, whether I'm playing football or not. And so I actually went to a small liberal arts college, started playing football, and I, too, was going to be an engineer. And I spent 2 years doing pre-engineering, and then I realized that was for the birds. And so I actually transferred back to Wayne State University in Detroit and focused on getting a degree so that I could go into the teaching profession. And I always had this goal, almost like you, like I'm not going to be a teacher. I'm going to be a superintendent. I'm going for the highest levels. And in some ways, I believe that a lot of my choices did, in the back of my mind, have a level of influence based on how much money I could make. So it wasn't that I was going to go do it for passion and, I wanted to change and scope young minds. I was like, man, I want to get out of the hood. I want to have a different life. And so I think I've always thought about how much money I was going to make. And that influenced a lot of my decision making.
I think that's a really interesting point because I think that, you know, we talked in a previous episode about, talking about money. And I think talking about our motivation can be a very interesting conversation. And for you to understand that making more money was your ticket out of the hood is very telling. I think that, and my thought process was different because the truth of the matter is that Chris doesn't allow me to claim Detroit. He's like, you are not from the D. I am a suburbanite, and I have always been a suburbanite. I probably lived in the actual city of Detroit for 7 years. But I do think that that is a very fair conversation, to ask yourself and to talk with your partner about why. Why is it that you want the things that you want, or why are you striving for certain things, and what is it that you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I find it interesting too because I actually graduated. I had a degree in English and I started teaching at an elementary school. And while I was doing that, I actually started taking graduate programs to get a master's degree and a teaching certificate. But after that first semester of being in the elementary school, I was like, again, this is for the birds. I was like, I don't know whose kids these are, but either they going to jail or I'm gonna end up in jail. So
there's always a story behind that. Always.
yeah, I just realized that wasn't for me. And I believe at that point we had determined that we were going to get married. I had proposed to you and we were at that point engaged, and you spoke about the opportunity that you had with Motorola. And so we decided that we were going to move. So for me, I really had to assess, well, what am I going to do? I was working at FedEx as a courier and teaching during the day. So people, that's one thing, I've always been on that full-time grind. So when I was in college, I worked full-time, went to school full-time. And even when I graduated, I was teaching during the day, working at FedEx in the evening because, brother had a wedding to pay for. So I think early on, we kind of knew that not going into marriage with debt was the right thing to do because I kept that FedEx job. So, I could pay for the pictures and the honeymoon and the various things because nobody even told us to do that. But we just organically knew this makes more sense than to put this on credit and go into our marriage with additional debt beyond what we already had.
That's a super good point because a lot of people have rings, they have the wedding, they have a honeymoon on credit, and they're paying for that and probably bringing a lot of resentment. And no shade to anyone, for whom that is your story. I think that back in the day, I mean, we got married a long time ago. I know that our wedding was around $8,000. That was it, all in. We had about
150 people, I believe,
that actually showed up. We invited around 200, and we had like a lunch kind of buffet. So it wasn't, a plated dinner.
It was like you jokers gonna get up and walk up to this buffet
that's right.
and serve yourselves.
But we saved money. And I think that was probably the biggest assignment that we had in our early relationship before we got married, to make something work around money. And that didn't occur until we were a year and a half into our relationship and we started planning that wedding. But those 6 months, we committed almost silently. We had this silent commitment that it just would not be on debt. And we paid for a lot of it. My mother helped and his mom helped, and even our dads, put some money in on some stuff.
Look, I think that was the one time I went and actually got some money from my father. He was like, "Here, I got $800 for you, son." I was like, "Well, you know what? That's gonna help, and it's gonna go to the pool." So
That's right. Every dollar counted. Every dollar counted. And so I think that that's really a fair thing to think about is that, when you're about to, embark on something new and something big like that, it's super important to figure out how you want to do that and be on the same page with that for sure.
yeah, I was thankful for your mom being willing to help,
Mhm.
in the way that she did. But when we got in the limo and we pulled away, all I could say is that we walked away with no debt from
Mhm.
a wedding, and we walked into our future not incurring any new debt. So
Mhm.
we already talked about that we both had about the same amount of debt that we when we entered the marriage,
Mhm.
we had about the same amount. And so when we moved to Arizona, you already had a job. So you had already committed to a career. You were going to be an engineer. And here I had a college degree, and I had to decide what I wanted to do. And the one thing I knew after working at FedEx for years, I was like, I don't want to get my hands dirty because my hands stayed dirty working at
Yeah,
FedEx.
I got me a pretty boy over here.
And so I was like, you know what? Whatever I'm going to do, it's not going to involve me getting my hands dirty. And so I actually entered the sales profession. And a lot of people, they think about sales that it has the potential, upside. And I started out as an IT recruiter, worked for, a company, gave me some great experience. Then I transitioned and I became a sales rep at a telecom company. And that, man, that teaches you how to go out and hustle and grind. And, you've got to make things happen there. But, you had a larger salary than I did. I had a moderate salary, but I had earning potential with commissions. And I really think that once we got on board with eliminating debt, I believe some of that was really helpful to us because I did make commissions. And so we started just saying we were going to put commissions towards debt versus continuing to level up in lifestyle. Even though, let's be honest, we continued to make mistakes because we got married a year later, we were having a child. So having a child, you got to get a house. So we went out and built a house. And, with that, you got to get another car because the cars we have are insufficient.
And that's a whole nother story for
Right. Which we'll save those for another day. But we incurred more debt after that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until we reached a point we were like, well, wait a minute. We got to stop this or this is going to be a hamster wheel
Mhm.
that we're on.
Yeah, and I think the thing that was really important for us both is to try and figure out how to advance in our careers so that we can go from the level we started at to another level. We never wanted to, both of us, I believe, were pretty ambitious. I worked at Motorola, and for the very first year, I was on a rotation program. So I would see, the process side or the product side or the design side or the testing. And that helped me to understand, okay, I think I want to be a designer. And so they would give you opportunities to preview places where you wanted to be. And I'm like, where can I flourish the most? Where can I get my hands dirty? Because my husband didn't want to get his hands dirty. I was like, I want to get my hands dirty in this engineering world. And so I landed in the design world for a while. And while that was awesome, I was a person who was in a very dark room with all of the other designers looking at a screen for 8 hours. And so, gosh, that was isolating and lonely. And I found community at the water cooler when I was going to fill up my water bottle. And um, I'm much more of a people person than that. It did not fit my personality. And so, a couple of years in, I shifted to product. And that meant that I could see a product from start to finish. So I could see it in the design phase and work with those engineers, and then also the people who processed it, and brought it to life, and then those who tested it. And it was my job to make sure that it flowed in our project on time. And that was much more of my personality, and that was probably the first time that I actually did a presentation, was to share about how this product came to life. And again, I kind of liked it. I really liked the numbers and the data, but I didn't love engineering. I mean, I spent 7 years in that career, and the company was fine, and we went through different phases, and there were, like I said, things that I enjoyed, but I saw a man who worked there who was very highly respected. He was a senior product engineer, and he worked for Motorola for 40 years. And it was then that I decided there's absolutely no way I can do this for 40 years.
So I think it's kind of funny that here we are all these years later. You've been self-employed for so long, and we're starting our own ventures. Did you ever think in those early years that you'd leave that corporate job and go on and do something different?
I did not think that I was capable. Oh my gosh. That's like probably the first time I've said that. Because I was scared, and I didn't know what to do when I was in a field where I went to get this degree specifically for this thing, and I wasn't satisfied, and I didn't exactly know what to do with that. So what ended up happening was, in our get out of debt journey, which we'll get into that in another episode, but during that time is when, I realized I wanted to help other people the way that we, were able to find our freedom, and that the idea of it being able to open up more possibilities for me to do something different, because I really didn't want to leave that job to just go to another engineering job. That I knew.
Yeah, we started talking about it during that period of time
Yeah.
that we were on that journey. But I think the interesting thing is that while we were on that debt-free journey, and I had been an IT recruiter, so I've been recruiting these people that were software salespeople, and I saw all the money they were making. I was like, man, I'm going into software sales. Then I got into telecom sales just so I can get some more experience. And I had a buddy who worked in the pharmaceutical industry. And then one of my coworkers that I met, in telecom, he left and went to the pharma industry. So I was like, okay, I'm either going to go into pharma or I'm going into software. And I started looking and got a great opportunity to join a pharmaceutical company. And it was probably some years before that our salaries had kind of leveled out, and we were making similar money. And together we were doing fairly decent for a young couple, on the come up. But it wasn't until I got that job that I had the largest salary that I had and the potential to, earn bonus, and they gave me a car, and I was like, man, this is great when I got that. And it was at that point that you transitioned from working corporately to starting your own business, because we'd eliminated our debt, and we were in a position where I had a salary and the ability that would, it would take care of all of our needs. And so I just stayed on that corporate road. And, for you, I'm still on that corporate road. And I've been in that industry for 17, 18 years now, and it's been very fruitful and very, it's provided for our family in a lot of ways.
He's a corporate dude. But I think, I'm thankful that you have been this hard worker and ambitious. I think that has definitely been helpful. I was not sure about what I would do or how I could do it and make money. I was never going to have a nonprofit, but
You're not making money, people. It's a hobby.
Right. And I didn't want a hobby. I was definitely a person who was built to make money. And I think that's something I innately knew. I just was really not sure of how I was going to create something that would build into what is today tailor-made budgets. And so I think that
or Ericka Young Official.
That's right, ErickaYoung.com.
On Instagram.
But I think, it's interesting because as we're talking about this, it's really making me reflect on there was a moment when I was in this cycle. There were a couple of moments. One was I called Chris when, we had this involuntary layoff, and also voluntary layoffs. And I desperately wanted to take the voluntary layoff so that I could try my hand at this whole budget coaching, is what I called it at the time, to help other people get out of debt. And I was crying. I was at work. I found some quiet spot and I just was like, I really want to do this. And we weren't out of debt at that time. And so that's when I think we decided to like accelerate, because it was an emotional, like this was so vital to our family that I not be in a place where I'm unhappy. And then there was another moment. And then, of course, I decided, oh, I'm going to take a business class. Oh, I'm going to go to this women in business boot camp. Let me get around some other entrepreneurs on the weekends and at night and things like that. And then, my pastor would, he gave me a couple people to talk to about budgets. And I started to really get excited. And when we paid off our debt, I felt emotionally ready to leave. And I felt like I could understand how this would happen. I of course didn't have steps 7, 8, and 9. I had 1, 2, 3, and, take faith for the rest of it. Right. And so that's an interesting question that you asked. Did I ever think I'd leave my corporate job? So while I'm thankful that you have had one, I didn't think I'd leave until I took steps to figure out what would be next. And that was huge. And now looking back, because we probably waited about 3 months after we paid off the debt, because that was at least $1,200 a month that we were paying in debt payments between car notes and student loans and credit cards. At one point, it was that much just on minimum payments. And so that afforded us the freedom to not have to pay those dollars. But there was a day when God was like, it's time. Like, you're being disobedient. It's time to go.
This is pretty therapeutic as I sit here and I listen, because it makes me reflect on those times, because now that you bring it up, I remember that conversation. Mm-hmm. And what it did, it prompted us to sit down and be more intentional about the plan that we needed to execute to, kind of get across the finish line, because we were already working a debt reduction strategy, mm-hmm. and we were being pretty aggressive. But I think it kicked us into hyper gear. Like, okay, we have a deadline. And we started saying, okay, we need to do this, 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 and this. And so I saw that it kind of, like, you were thinking about one thing. And as I sit on the other side of the table here, I was thinking totally different, because I was like, you know what? I want to put her in a position to not have stress and worry mm-hmm. at work. So I've got to go and figure out how to make sure that I provide for our family in a way that we don't have to, step back in any way from the lifestyle that we want and choose to live.
And we had 2 little kids. We had a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. And at this point, it was imperative that we still be able to, like you say, take care of our family in a way that was, that we can feel good about.
Yeah, that's when I realized that I wanted to go back to grad school, mm-hmm. and I wanted to get an MBA, because I was working in the pharmaceutical arena as a sales rep, and I started going through like leadership development there, and then I went back and I got an MBA and, in management, and then doors and opportunities started to open up for me in my corporate career, because I was good at what I did. I got more skills. And, that really just opened up more and more opportunities. And it's those things that have continued to open doors for me corporately to relieve stress, mm-hmm. and really allow you to go out and blossom and, create the business that you have. So we've been doing things in parallel. You've been building your business. I've been building my corporate career. And I really think it's the both of those things that have helped us, because we'll get into the story later about how we got out of debt. but we've been out of debt for 17 years,
Mm-hmm.
and we're on the way to, pay our home off, which that will be done, in short time here in the near future. And so we have been able to do some things, and we moved
Yeah.
in that, So we were in Arizona, then we moved to another part of the country. And so I think it's just been really, really good.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'll say is I'm really thankful that we were on the same page about getting out of debt, because what it just gave to us was options. It gave us the ability and the freedom to choose something. And that is something to think about, ponder. What's possible if you pay off your debt, if you free up that cash? What could you do? What are the dreams that you could accomplish? Because I didn't know it at the time when we were trying to get out of debt that there was a dream inside of me. But when we did that, it made room for it
Hmm.
to be a reality when I figured out what that was.
Did you ever have any regrets on leaving your corporate job?
None. I can say that pretty quickly. None.
That's a good spot to be in, to
Yeah.
walk away and not have regrets. I haven't regretted being in my corporate job, but there was a moment when I was considering, like, becoming a self-employed
Mm-hmm.
business owner, and I actually had a side hustle.
Yeah, that's interesting. I want to hear more about this side hustle and what made you jump in to do that.
Look, I always was a suit guy, and I like to look good and be dressed well. And so I had this dream about, like, maybe one day I would start, a men's clothing store or something like that. So I actually went and got a job at the men's warehouse. I was like, I don't know the retail business. I haven't worked there. And, I think I spent all my paychecks on suits.
It didn't come out the budget no. The good thing about that is him looking good did not hurt us financially. How about that?
Right. I was spending extra time learning the business, but, my discretionary income I was making, I was reinvesting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know a lot of people nowadays have side gigs and side hustles, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because what it can do, it can actually begin to pave the way for that future endeavor and that
Mm-hmm.
future thing that you want to get into.
Yeah.
And though budget coaching wasn't, you kind of stopped and started. Like, you stopped working corporately and started, in the budget coaching, in that arena, the financial arena. I think the way we did it, it just supported. I was able to support you to go off in that endeavor, and you have been able to build that and then bring income home
Mm-hmm.
that contributes to the bottom line, that helps us accelerate the plan
Yeah.
that we've had all along. So,
Yeah. And I actually had a side gig too. This is something a lot of folks don't know about me. So welcome to my world. When we moved to Indianapolis about 10 years ago, I wanted to get to know the city, and I thought it might be a great idea to, do some workplace classes. And what that means is I actually went in with Weight Watchers. Yes, I was a Weight Watcher. I've been a diehard Weight Watcher probably for 20 years. Not right now, but, for 20 years probably. And I was one of the coaches that would go in and deliver the Weight Watchers groups in the workplace. And so I got to see the city because I would drive downtown or different parts of um, the Indy metro area and got to know people. And actually have made a few business connections as a result of it as well. And I did that for about a year and a half because I had to sort of re-engage with the business in a new place, and I had to start networking, and so that was a way for me to get out and meet people, learn the city, and make a few bucks on the side as well. But I think that it was really good to, have that side hustle at that time because it kept me going, if you will, in a lot of different ways.
look, it's proof positive that there's nothing wrong with a side hustle.
Yeah, absolutely. And nowadays, people are side hustling all over the place. It's super easy. Like, this is a gig economy. If you don't have a side hustle, you are probably a part of this less than 10% of people who do not have some type of side hustle or business. So this isn't just a job; it could be a business that you have on the side. A lot of people are doing that now because of inflation. A lot of people are doing that to offset the fact that inflation has risen to like 8.5%. But whatever the case, it can help you in whatever goal that you have. So it could be offsetting inflation. It could also be trying to get out of debt. It could be trying to fund this awesome vacation that you're trying to have, or simply just looking good like my husband had to do when he went to the Men's Warehouse. But whatever the case, side gig is the place to be right now, or the side business is what lots of folks are up to right about now. And I think that it's just an awesome way to supplement what it is that you're trying to do. So let me ask you this. Do you have, and like, what was it about this corporate job that made you stay for nearly you've been in corporate, in my opinion, for the last almost 25 years. So what is intriguing to you about corporate work? Because I don't know anymore. I'm out that world. I'm an entrepreneur. So help me understand.
As I don't get this wrong, but as a head of household, I always think about risk stratification,
He's got these air quotes going right now.
where if you are going to go out and venture off into new things that, aren't proven yet, I believe in you, I've supported you, just get it on the record. I gave her first investment.
My $200 so I can get my
Exactly. So
my logo.
I'm a founding member of the business.
That's right.
So, but in all reality, I just wanted to make sure that I could be happy doing something and produce an income from it that I knew would take care of us while you were building the business, and it's provided us benefits and from a medical perspective, because that's a tremendous cost for people who venture out on their own. And we've got great coverage. We've got great benefits because I work for a healthcare company, and I haven't paid for a vehicle of my own in going on, it's a long time, people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a major benefit. And so I've always looked at, what the risk reward was, and what was asked of me was something that I was never unwilling to give or unwilling to do. And I didn't know it at the time, but, I'm a science nerd. And so I really get into that, and I like the impact of the things that I'm able to do. And as I've gone through my corporate journey over the years, I've gotten increasing more responsibility that has caused me to gain additional skills and, work in different areas. So over these years, I haven't just done one thing. I've worked for several corporations that really just built my repertoire, my business background, has given me solid understanding. They pay for me to go to grad school. And so I've look, don't complain about where you're at. If you don't like it, change it, go somewhere else. But also take full advantage of everything that is offered to you via your employer. And Ericka knows that's one thing that I have always done. I've made it work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, while my employer could separate me and, move on, I've always maintained the mentality that I run Chris Young Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the president and CEO.
And I'm
Chris
the
Young,
CFO.
Well, you're the CTO. You deal with a lot of the technical aspects of our life and family.
Mm-hmm.
But we share the role of CFO
Yeah.
because we have joint decision making.
Yeah.
No one really vetoes another, but we discuss things.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always had that mentality that I've got to do things that are going to help Chris Young Incorporated move forward. And so that's really what has helped me stay the road of corporate America, because I've just tried to make it work for me. And to be honest, we could go on and on and on about just this. And no matter what, your point of view or your perspective is, I think you've got to just look at things. And there's a lot of statistics out there that you can, find about going and doing side gigs or transitioning from corporate to, sole ownership or LLCs. And we're not telling you one thing is right or
Mm-mm.
one thing is wrong. It's got to be right for you.
Yeah, and I actually think that it's worked out really well for us as a team to have one entrepreneur and one person who's in corporate, and that I think we've leveraged pretty well. That works as a great balance for us. There's lots of folks who are, their household is fully entrepreneurial, and there are lots of folks who are fully corporate, and that works for them as well. I think the biggest thing is know why you're doing what you're doing. I think that's, in my opinion, you stay in corporate because you want to and you understand the benefits and you're going to take advantage of those. You are an entrepreneur, because you are really excited about delivering some type of product or service that is amazing. You might be both for whatever reasons, but know your why. Don't get out here making money and you know, getting off your purpose, getting off the journey that you were created for, because when that's out of alignment, people see fake all the time.
And I'll be honest, I felt like God told me to go into the corporate world, learn all that you can, and bring that back for the good of the community, for the faith community. So I've taken a lot of my business endeavors and I've used them in the churches we've been involved with and in leadership. And I've taken all those things and I've leveraged them not just for work. They've helped me acquire the skills, but I've been able to take those and go into the community and do things and go and impact in a lot of ways that building that muscle and that skill has really empowered me to not only go and work a 9 to 5, but I've taken those skills and I've done so much more with it. And so is it worth it? We leverage corporate, we leverage side gigs, and we leverage entrepreneurial endeavors to reach our goals.
Yeah.
And that was how we preferred to take our journey, and it's worked out pretty well for us. But we'll say to you, do what works for you.
Yeah.
And take these things that we're sharing and just know that your vision may cause you to do something a little bit differently. And it's neither right nor wrong. And so we appreciate you guys listening to this, yet another episode. We'll get more into our journey on how we got out of debt, and we'll give you guys some insight in that. So once again, we thank you for joining the For Better and Worth podcast.
And until next time,
thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up for our email on forbetterandworth.com.
Till next time, we're out of here.